Hello everybody, I'm Miss Jessica from EVPL McCullough, and I'm coming to you from my house today where we are going to be continuing our chapter book story time. So last time when we were together, we used our Plinko board to find out what we were going to be reading the next time. So for today, we are going to be reading realistic fiction, which means that it is very, very much grounded in reality. There's nothing fantastical like dragons or wizards. There's nothing like robots from science fiction or time travel or anything like that. It's something that could happen in everyday life. So for this genre, I picked Jacqueline Woodson's 𝐻𝑎𝑟𝑏𝑜𝑟 𝑀𝑒, and we'll see what the back of this says. And it's actually a very short description on the back. It says, 6 kids, 1 school year, a room to talk. Once there were 6 of us. Once we circled around each other and listened, or maybe what matters most is what we heard. All right, so these 6 individuals are going to maybe come together, maybe talk to each other and learn from each other. So we're gonna see what that's about as we preview a little bit of our chapter book. And Harper has already joined us. She's very interested in hearing this as well. All right, so let's get started. Okay, 𝐻𝑎𝑟𝑏𝑜𝑟 𝑀𝑒 by Jacqueline Woodson. Chapter 1. We think they took my poppy. It's over now, or maybe it isn't. Maybe even as I sit on my bed in the dying light of the late afternoon, it's beginning again. Maybe Miss Laverne is looking over the new class list, her finger moving down the row of names. Maybe her, she is thinking, and him and her, but it won't be the same. It won't ever be the 6 of us together again. We think they took my poppy. My uncle is a musician and a storyteller. He says the hardest part of telling a story is finding the beginning. I've pulled the voice recorder from my closet and have it sitting in the middle of my bed now. When I press play, Esteban's voice fills my room. It is scratchy and far away sounding, but still, Esteban is here again. And all of us are sitting in our small circle in a place we call the art room, and that's spelled A-R-T-T. Nobody knows where he's at. Outside, a blue jay perches on the edge of a branch. Tree of heaven, Miss Laverne taught us that. It's the same tree the girl in a tree grows in Brooklyn saw from her fire escape. The thing about that tree was it could grow anywhere and keep growing, and that was the metaphor. That even when things got really hard for everyone in that story, even when the dad died and the mom had to scrub more and more floors to make money, even when the kids didn't have anything to eat for days and the apartment was freezing, the tree kept growing. The main character, her name was Francie. She was like that tree. Miss Laverne said that all of us, Esteban, Tiago, Holly, Amari, Ashton, and even me, were like that tree too. My uncle is moving out tomorrow. He's really the only parent I've ever known. He says, this is a beginning. He says, now you'll have 2 houses to go to. He says, you're 12 now, Haley. You're ready. But I'm not ready. This afternoon, I miss everything. I miss my uncle, even though he's upstairs packing. I miss the art room. I miss Holly and Amari arguing and Ashton pulling his hair away from his forehead. This afternoon, I miss Tiago's dreams of the sea and Esteban's poems and all the stories we finally trusted each other enough to tell. I miss the beginning of our story together and the deep middle of it. Once there were 6 of us. Once we circled around each other and listened. Or maybe what matters most is that we were heard. Downstairs, my father is playing the piano, soft, sad notes floating up from the living room. The piano is old. Found on the street a few blocks away the day my father moved back home. My father, uncle, and 3 other men lifted it up the stairs and then had to remove the door to get it inside. It's an upright, scratched wood and yellowing keys. My father took a whole day tuning it, and now the notes move through the house, dipping down at the end like tears, rising up like a prayer. Upstairs, I can hear my uncle moving from dresser to bed and back again, and I know he is neatly folding his shirts and sweaters into his suitcase. Most of his stuff is downstairs already. Boxes line the hall by the front door. His favorite chair is draped with a blanket. His guitars are stacked in their cases beside it. Tomorrow he will move to Manhattan and start his new life. I'll be a bachelor. I was always meant to be, he said. Then seeing the look on my face, I failed at hiding it, he added. I'll be back every single Sunday to spend time with my most favorite person in the world. I don't remember my life without my uncle in it. In 2 weeks, I'll begin 7th grade. My best friend Holly will be there, but there will be holes where Ashton, Amari, Tiago, and Esteban once were. We think they took my poppy. I play the first words of Esteban's story over and over as my father's song lifts up to my room, as my uncle pecks above me, as the blue jay perches on the tree, as the world keeps on spinning. Chapter 2. That first week of September, the rain wouldn't stop. Rivers ran down the curbs and the corners near our school. Cars had stalled in the middle of the huge pools of rainwater. Even though it was still warm outside, our classroom felt damp and a little bit cold. Some of the kids were playing with those spinner things. One boy, whose name I forget, had his head down on his desk. I remember his dark curls, the way they fell over his arm. For some reason, those curls spiraling over his arm and down onto the scratched up desk made me sadder than anything. There were 8 of us then. Our small class had come together because the school wanted to try something new. Could they put 8 kids together in a room with one teacher and make something amazing? 8 special kids? Even though they didn't say it, we knew there was something different about us. We had all been in the big classrooms before and our learning felt like a race, so we were losing while the other kids sped ahead. We made believe we didn't care that we learned differently, but we knew we did. And the school knew we did. The school knew we got laughed at and teased in the big yard, that some days we faked stomach aches and sore throats to stay home. It was only September, so no one knew if the experiment would work. But our teacher, Miss Laverne, was tall and soft-spoken and patient. We loved her immediately, and the school itself had huge windows and brightly colored walls. My uncle said it was one of the best schools in the city. I had been there with Holly since 1st grade, so I didn't really have any other schools to compare it to. But if nice teachers and rooms filled with lots of windows made something the best, then I guess it was true. By the end of that rainy week, the boys with the curls had moved away, and another girl's mom had come in and fussed about her daughter being smarter than those children, while Miss Laverne shushed her and guided her with her daughter gently out of the room. The girl looked like she wanted to sink into the floor and disappear. We never saw her again, but sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if she had gotten a chance to be a part of the art room, if she'd gotten to hear what we heard, see what we saw, after she and the curly-haired boy left. Only Miss Laverne and the 6 of us remained. An hour after class started on that Friday, Esteban came in, his head down, his hair slicked wet against his forehead, his Yankees cap dripping with rain. He walked straight to his seat without looking at the rest of us. I watched him sink into his seat so sadly and heavily, it felt like the whole room shivered. His jacket was way too big for him, the shoulders hanging down his arms, the sleeves falling over his hands. I didn't know Esteban yet. I didn't know anyone but Holly, really, but I wanted to go over and hug him hard. I didn't care how dripping wet he was. No one should ever have to look that sad. Do you have a late pass for me, Esteban? Miss Laverne asked. She was standing at the front of the room, her arm stretched out toward the smartboard. I don't remember what was on it, maybe a globe? Our tiny group that year was a 5th, 6th grade class. This, too, was a school experiment. Is everything okay? Miss Laverne's dark brown face was crisscrossed with worry. Esteban shook his head. I don't have a pass, he said, his voice breaking. We think they took my poppy. Nobody knows where he's at. He put his head down on the desk, his face turned toward the window. Miss Laverne went over to Esteban's desk and bent toward him, her hand on his back. They spoke softly to each other. Maybe they spoke for 5 minutes. Maybe it was an hour. I don't remember. That was a long time ago. So much can change in a minute, an hour, a year. Chapter 3. While Miss Laverne talked to Esteban about his father that morning, I thought about mine. I thought about handcuffs. I thought about fathers being taken away. I thought about uncles coming to the rescue and mothers gone. My memory is mostly shadows now, my father's pale hands hanging from silver handcuffs, the cops pushing his head down into the police car, my uncle coming to me and lifting me up into his arms. I was 3 years old. When my uncle first came to live with me, I was afraid. It was this vague fear around the edges of myself. Whenever I got real quiet in class, Miss Laverne knew why. As I watched Esteban that morning, I felt it. That fear coming around the corner, finding me, finding both of us. I stared over at him. I wanted to give Esteban the same sign, my pinky pointing toward him while my thumb pointed toward me. I wanted to say, I know that thing, Esteban. I looked out the window that same way. Miss Laverne turned from Esteban and told us to read quietly to ourselves. We took our books from our bags and opened them, but I don't know if any of us read a single word. The whole world felt wide open suddenly, like it wanted to swallow us. I heard him tell Miss Laverne, I'm scared. I'm so scared. When the lunch bell rang, Esteban stayed behind. I wanted to touch his shoulder as I walked out and say, it won't always feel like this that first day. It won't always feel this bad. But I didn't. I let the words hang in my throat until Holly grabbed my hand and pulled me down the hall with her. Behind us, I heard Amari say, E, what's going on? Talk to me, bruh. Chapter 4. There's one thing I do remember as clear as if it happened an hour ago. It's the afternoon when Miss Laverne said to us, put down your pencils and come with me. It was the end of September, and we had been taking a spelling test. Esteban had been absent for days, and when he finally returned, Miss Laverne asked him if he was up to doing some work, and he nodded. It helps me forget for a little while, he said. Forget what? Amari asked. That nobody knows where they took him, and now we're packing up everything, Esteban said, because if they took him, maybe they're going to take us too. I turned back to my test. I didn't want to think about fathers. Mine had been in prison for 8 years by then. In the last letter we'd gotten, he said he wasn't sure what would happen with his parole. If he got it, he didn't know exactly when he'd be coming home. I remember zero about living with him. Every good thing that happened had happened with my uncle. I couldn't imagine a different life. Didn't want to imagine it. Not for me. Not for anyone. I was stuck on the word holiday. Did it have 1 L or 2? My spelling had always been bad, but in Miss Laverne's class, it didn't matter so much because we were all at different levels and one thing or another. The words you miss just tell me what you don't know yet, Miss Laverne always said. It says nothing about who you are. For some reason, that made me feel better. I was 11 years old. What 11-year-old didn't know how to spell holiday? Put down your pencils and come with me. The 6 of us stood up. Our school uniforms were white shirts and dark blue pants or skirts. We could wear any jackets, shoes, tights we wanted. I had worn blue and white striped tights that day. Holly's tights had red stars on them. When we stood next to each other in the schoolyard that morning, our stars and stripes echoed, the flag waving from the pole above us. We had spent the minutes before the bell rang dancing around it while Holly sang that old song about having a hammer. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning. We stood next to our desks and waited for Miss Laverne to tell us what to do next. Amari pulled his hoodie over his head, then quickly pulled it off again, the way he did sometimes when he was nervous. Amari was beautiful. His skin was so dark, you could almost see the color blue running beneath it. His eyes were dark too, dark like there was smoke behind his pupils, dark and serious and infinite. In that 5th, 6th grade class, I didn't know how to say any of this. I wanted only to look at him and look at him. Take a picture, it lasts longer, Amari said to me in such a cranky way it almost brought me to tears. Ashton smirked, then pulled his hair away from his forehead and held his hand there. She doesn't want a picture of you, Holly said. Bad enough we have to look at you 5 days a week. She had left her desk and was heading over to the classroom library. Holly, back to your desk, Miss Laverne said. I want you all to take your books. You won't be coming back here today. We all gathered our stuff and followed her into the hallway. Miss Laverne took out her phone and said, "Smile, people." In the photo, Holly and I have our fingers linked together, our tights looking crazier than anything. Amari has his hood halfway up and halfway off, and Tiago, Esteban, and Ashton are all looking away from the camera. The picture is taped to my refrigerator now. We all look so young in it. Our cheeks puffing out with baby fat, our uniform shirts untucked, Tiago's sneakers untied. We walked down the hall behind Miss Laverne, her heels softly clicking. I thought about how maybe one day I'd grow up to wear black shoes with small heels that clicked as I walked down a hall, and have students following behind who were a little bit in love with me. Two small kids came running down the hall, but when they saw Miss Laverne, they stopped and started walking so slowly I almost laughed. Esteban pulled his knapsack onto his shoulder and held it with both hands. "You okay, bro?" Amari asked, put his hand on Esteban's arm. "Nah," Esteban said, "not really." Amari moved his arm over Esteban's shoulder and kept it there. Chapter 5. When we got to room 501, Miss Laverne opened the door and held it for us. Nobody knew what to do, so we just walked in and stood there. The room was bright and smelled like it had just been cleaned with the same oil soap my uncle used on our floors. Back when me and Holly were in 3rd grade, it had been the art room, but then someone gave our school enough money to open up a whole art studio in the basement. So now this was just a room we passed by sometimes and said to each other, "Remember when that used to be the art room?" "Welcome to room 501, said Miss Laverne. Holly ran in ahead of us and the rest of us followed and looked around. And the old art room, there was just a few of those chairs with the swing-up desks in a circle, a teacher's desk with no chair, a big clock on the wall, and some little kid's ancient painting of a bright yellow sun thumbtacked to the closet door. Esteban asked, "Are we getting transferred to a new class?" He put his knapsack down between his ankles and hugged himself. Amari had taken his arm off Esteban's shoulder, but was still standing close to him. When Esteban shivered, Amari put his arm back. I heard him whisper, "It's all good, bro. It's all good. Miss Laverne's not taking us somewhere we don't want to be." Miss Laverne sat on the edge of the teacher's desk and folded her arms. "Every Friday, from now until the end of the school year, the 6 of you will leave my classroom at 2 p.m. and come to room 501. You'll sit in this circle and you'll talk. When the bell rings at 3, you're free to go home." "Why can't we just talk in our regular classroom?" Holly asked, hopping up onto the teacher's desk. "I mean, in your classroom." Our regular classroom wasn't regular, we knew that, but still. "Down from there, please, Holly." Miss Laverne waited for Holly to jump off again before she continued. "I don't want to hear what you have to say to each other. This is your time, your world, your room." "Sounds like you're trying to get an early break from us," Holly said. "Give yourself your own kind of half day." Miss Laverne laughed. "One day, Holly, your brain will be very useful to you." Holly looked like she wasn't sure if her teacher was complimenting her. "What I'm trying to do is give you the space to talk about the things kids talk about when no grown-ups are around. Don't you all have a world you want to be in that don't have people who look like me in it?" "Nope," Amari said. "Yeah," Ashton said. "Not really." "We like being with you," I added, "in the other room." "You like what you know," Miss Laverne said. "You like what's familiar." None of us said anything. She was right. What was wrong with liking familiar things? "Nothing's wrong with that," Miss Laverne said, being a teacher, mind reader. "But what's unfamiliar shouldn't be scary, and it shouldn't be avoided either." "But I don't know what we're even supposed to talk about," Tiago said. "Like schoolwork and stuff? And to who?" "Schoolwork, toys, TV shows, me, yourselves, anything you want to talk about. To each other, and it's to whom, Tiago." "To whom," Tiago said to himself, like he was practicing it. "To whom?" I think any other bunch of kids would have started happy dancing and acting crazy because there weren't going to be any grown-ups around. But we weren't any other kids. I heard Amari say, "That's stupid," so quietly that I wondered if I was hearing things. Then he said, "We could be talking in a class if we wanted to be talking. You trying to change the art room into the ARTT room, a room to talk." "That's tight," Ashton said. He and Amari pounded fists. "I like that." Miss Laverne clapped once and pointed at Amari. You are brilliant. I could have come up with that, Holly rolled her eyes. I could have added an R and thrown out an acronym out there. She said acronym loudly, making sure Miss Laverne heard. Nice use of the word, Holly, Miss Laverne said. Okay, so because the art room is now the ARTT room, no one gets in trouble for talking here. You get in trouble for taking out your phone. You get in trouble for being disrespectful. How are you going to know if we are not in here with us? Amari asked. I'll know. And we all knew she was telling the truth. Teachers knew things. That's all there was to it. Well, what if I don't have anything to say to anybody? Amari asked. Miss Laverne laughed again. Since when do you not have anything to say, Amari? She shook her head and waved her hand to include all of us. I can't believe you all are so resistant. I'm giving you an hour to chat. You get in trouble for this every single day. How many times do I have to say no talking? Now I'm saying talk. Amari tried to hide a smile, but he didn't do a great job of it. Okay, I'm vibing it. The old art room is the new ARTT room, y'all. And I bet you can draw in here too if you want, Ashton said to him. Laverne nodded. Draw, talk, and yes, Amari, the ARTT room is beyond clever. Like I said, anybody could have thought of that, Holly said. Yeah, but I see you didn't, Amari said. And like I said, Miss Laverne told us, in this room, we won't be unkind. She started it. Doesn't matter, Amari. I just want to get it straight, Ashton said. So school now ends at 2 o'clock on Fridays? He had pale white skin like my uncle and hair that always fell into his eyes. Even as he asked, he was holding it back with his hand. Once Holly had said to him, just cut it already. And his ears turned bright red. My own hair had always been bright red, but lately it had started getting darker and kinkier. If Holly's mother didn't braid it for me, I just pulled it back into a sloppy ponytail that frizzled all around my face. Geez, Ashton, Holly said, that's not what she's saying. This is not deep, people. I just don't understand why we're going into another room, Ashton said. By ourselves. All right, we're going to stop there. So I wonder what happens when 6 kids are left alone to talk. What are they going to talk about? Is it going to be deep stuff? Are they going to make friends and connections? Are they going to fight and hate each other? I really can't wait to keep reading this book. All right, so if you are interested in still reading this book and finding out what happens next, there are multiple copies to be checked out in our system. We also have a digital copy, so we have an ebook and an e-audiobook that you can also check out if you would rather read a digital copy or listen to it, which is still reading. So I hope you continue this story because I know I'm going to. I really want to know what happens next. So it's time for us to see what we're going to be reading next time. So I will be right back and we'll be using our Plinko board to see what genre we'll be reading next time we see each other. Thank you so much for joining me today for our realistic fiction chapter book story time. So we are going to go ahead and find out what we're going to be reading next time. The only thing that I will say is that when I do drop the chip down here, if it lands in the same genre that we just read, I will probably change that or do another one just because we want to get some variety. That's the whole point of this. Harper, are you ready for this? All right, so here we go. And actually, I'm going to start on that side and see if we get anything really fun. Okay, here we go. Humor. All right, so next time we're going to be reading some books that are considered really, really funny. So, oh my goodness, I'm very excited because I have some titles picked out that were making me laugh out loud as I was reading through them. So, thank you for joining us. I hope you had some fun today listening to our story, and if you would like to check it out, don't forget there's always ways to call us and reserve that for a curbside pickup, or you can go and check it out as an ebook. And if you go and like and subscribe our EVPL Library YouTube page, you will always be notified when we put up new fun content. Not just chapter book story time, but we also have all kinds of different activities as well. If you go to evpl.org, You'll see all of our resources. Find out when the next chapter book story time is, what other activities are coming up, and you can also look at our collection, both our print collection and our digital collection. So thank you again for joining us. I hope to see you again soon. Harper does too. Bye.